course, on some occasions, men were interrogated or perhaps arrested, and you still had people in the DMP particularly, perhaps, who were able to help them. Was this a fairly frequent occurrence, would you say?
Well, not very often, because once you got into the grips, it was very difficult to get them out. That's what happened in the case of Dick McKee and Paddy Clancy, you know, on the eve of Bloody Sunday. They were arrested in their own houses, and they were brought to Dublin Castle. And we didn't know where they were. Couldn't find out, even through our agents. Because what happened there, they were brought into the auxiliary headquarters, and they found out who they were on the Sunday, and they just murdered them. They were brutally murdered in Dublin Castle.
Tell us the story, Frank Thornton, of Bloody Sunday.
Well, it's a very difficult story to tell because it has so many ramifications, and so many things have been said about it over the time. But it amounts to this in a nutshell, and that is that here in Dublin, the British set up an intelligence service, a civilian, if you like, intelligence service that were really the British Secret Service. They occupied houses in Lower Mount Street, Pembroke Street, and different streets throughout the city. And they operated from there, and they had their own agents. They had their own agents, Englishmen, which I always thought was one of the foolish things that they did, because they said they had agents. As a matter of fact, on one particular occasion, Dave Nelligan and myself and Tom Cullen were down in a very, very respectable house in just off Abbey Street, Rabietti's fish and chip shop. And there were 4 of these agents in there, and they started questioning Tom and myself. How did you fellas land this Irish brogue? We can't. Now, that's why I say they were foolish, because they were employing Englishmen to do work that even Irishmen would find it very difficult to do. And that's one of the things I'd like to say about that period. We had very, very little informants. There were very few informers at all, of any kind. And it's down to the credit of the people of the country, because it was a very difficult position, you know. But however, to come back to Dick McKee and Paddy Clancy, Dick was brigadier of the Dublin Brigade, and Paddy Clancy was adjutant. Well, now, their loss was terrific. But the plans had been set for the executions on Sunday morning.
How many men were you proposing to execute that Sunday morning?
Something about 20.
Scattered over the centre of the city?
Yeah, scattered all over the city. But they were all well known, they were all enumerated, their names were brought before the Cabinet, and the Cabinet gave sanction for the execution of every single one of these men before the job was let go on. So after elimination on that morning, on that Sunday morning, of course they saw red. Matter of fact, on one occasion there were 2 people. There were 2 of them missed. They weren't in the place that they should have been in that night to be executed, and they shot themselves in Dublin Castle that morning afterwards when the news came through. But however, as I say, McKee and Clancy were arrested, and they were in the castle, and an unfortunate man that came up from Clare got caught in Vaughan's hotel that Saturday night. He had nothing to do with the Sunday at all. He had nothing to do with that operation, and he was put into the same room with them in Exchange Court. And when they found out who they were, they just brutally murdered them. Now, McKee, I was at the post-mortem when we brought the bodies down. We got the bodies handed over to us. And there was a post-mortem with Surgeon Mead and Surgeon Barnable presided it. And McKee was ripped from there to there and from here to here, right down with bayonets. Just ripped every rib in his body and every bone in his body was broken. And it struck us at the time when we looked at Clancy that it would look as if McKee was standing in front of Clancy trying to save him or safeguard him, because Clancy was shot there, one wound, bullets, a gun straight up to the head and blew the head out. However, they went on, and of course, on that particular Sunday, we found out by accident, if you like, while it was through one of our agents, that while I was waiting for information or looking for information as to where McKee and Clancy were, we found out that they were going to shoot up Croke Park. That was a deliberate and absolute deliberately planned job. They had an aeroplane circling overhead, directing the auxiliaries, and they went there. We weren't able to stop it in time. The information only came when the ground was full. And it was decided more or less that, well, to make an announcement to vacate the ground would cause more panic than even the shooting, and we had to take a chance that the shooting wouldn't take place. However, they shot them up left, right, and centre, and we were very lucky. Very lucky.
Sunday morning, on that Sunday morning job, the elimination of these agents, did anyone pull out of it? Did anyone on your side not turn up?
No.
To do their job?
No.
How could men, they must have reached a great pitch of intensity to be able to go in, knock on a bedroom door and shoot a man down?
Well, of course, I suppose, like everything else, it wasn't an easy job to get men to do. They weren't let brood on it. They were told at the last minute, just before they went on the job, where they were going. They had ample time to back out if they wanted to back out, but they simply went ahead with the job. Now, all these fellows were armed. It wasn't a question just going in, as happened down in Mount Street, as you know, where the semblance of a fight was put up, and Frank Teeling was captured there. Although the other fellows, they were surrounded from outside. The auxiliaries came along in the middle of the fight there and surrounded the house, and the balance of the men fought their way out through the auxiliaries and got away. But Teeling, unfortunately, was wounded and fell off a wall into another yard and couldn't be found. And that's how he was captured. If you remember, he was afterwards rescued from Kilmainham jail.